You've been holding on for so long, praying when no one else saw, trusting when nothing made sense. What you don't realize is, heaven has already marked the day your waiting will end, and it's closer than you think. There comes a point in life where your prayers feel like echoes in an empty room. You've spoken them so many times with such faith that the words have almost become part of your breathing. And yet, day after day, nothing changes. The same struggles remain, the same unanswered questions linger, and the same weight sits on your chest when you wake up in the morning. You've done what was right. You've stayed faithful when it would have been easier to give up. You've held on when everything in you whispered, let go. You are tired, not just in your body, but in the deepest chambers of your heart. Tired of hoping for something you can't yet see. Tired of sowing seeds that seem to grow in everyone else's field but yours. Tired of trusting when the wait feels endless. But here you are, still holding on. That alone tells me something about you. It tells me you are one of those rare souls who refuse to let the darkness write the ending. And maybe right now you think God has gone silent, that He's watching from a distance while you carry the weight alone. But what if I told you His silence is not absence, and His delay is not denial? What if the reason you haven't seen the answer yet is because He's crafting something so unexpected, so perfectly timed, that it will not only answer your prayer, it will exceed it. Picture the moment before dawn. The sky is at its darkest, and the world feels still. You could be forgiven for thinking nothing is happening. But in that stillness, the sun is already on its way, and in a few breaths, the first light will break over the horizon. This is where you are right now. The darkness is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It's a sign that the light is closer than you think. The enemy wants you to believe that your trust has been wasted, that the years you've prayed, cried, and waited are years you'll never get back. But God is in the business of redeeming time. He can do in one moment what you could never do in a lifetime. And sometimes, the very season that made you the most weary is the one that positions you for the greatest breakthrough. When God surprises you, it's never small. He doesn't just fill the cup, He makes it overflow. He doesn't just open a door, He swings it wide so you know it was His hand that did it. And He doesn't just answer the prayer you whispered. He answers the ones you didn't even have the courage to speak. You may not feel it right now, but your trust has been building something in the unseen. Every time you chose faith over fear, you laid another brick. Every tear you cried in His presence became water for a seed you couldn't see. Every act of obedience, every moment you chose to wait rather than rush ahead, has been preparing you for this moment. And when His surprise comes, you'll understand why the wait was so long. Because the blessing was so big. So if your heart is tired but still trusting, hear this. Heaven has not overlooked you. Your name is still written on His hands. Your prayers are still before Him like incense. And even now, He is weaving together the threads of your story into something you couldn't have written for yourself. And when it happens, when the surprise arrives, it will come with a flood of joy that drowns every memory of the tears. You will stand there shaking your head, saying only God could have done this, and you will know that the waiting was worth it, because the God who promised is faithful, and His surprises always come right on time. When God is silent, our first instinct is often to assume something has gone wrong, that perhaps we missed His voice, or worse, that He has withdrawn from us altogether. But silence in the spiritual life is rarely a sign of abandonment. More often, it is a deliberate and loving strategy. Just as a teacher falls quiet during a test, God sometimes steps back, not to distance Himself from you, but to allow the strength He has been building in you to come forth. He knows that constant reassurance can make you dependent on the feeling of His presence rather than on the reality of His faithfulness. Think of the moments in Scripture when God appeared silent. Joseph in the prison cell, David hiding in caves, Esther in the shadow of Haman's plot, the disciples watching Jesus sleep in the storm. In each case there was a pause, a stillness, that could have been misinterpreted as neglect. But in every case, that silence was a stage being set. The quiet seasons are often the most pregnant with purpose, the moments when the roots of your faith grow deep enough to sustain the weight of the fruit that is coming. God's silence trains you to listen differently. In noise, you hear with your ears. In silence, you learn to hear with your heart. You begin to notice the subtle ways He is still speaking, through a verse that suddenly comes alive, through an unexpected kindness from someone, through the gentle nudge of the Holy Spirit reminding you that you are not forgotten. It's in these moments that trust matures from mere belief to unshakable confidence. The danger in God's silence is not that He will fail you, but that you will walk away before you see what He has been preparing. Silence tests not His faithfulness, but our endurance. It asks the question, do you trust me even when I'm not giving you what you want right now? And if your answer, though trembling, remains yes, you are positioning yourself for a kind of intimacy with Him that few ever know. When a master artist is at work, there is a stage where the canvas looks unfinished, where the brush strokes don't yet reveal the beauty to come. To interrupt that process would be to rob the painting of its final glory. So it is with God's work in your life. His silence is the part of the process where He's adding details you can't yet see, shaping outcomes you haven't imagined. If you can learn to trust Him here, in the quiet, in the unanswered prayers, in the nights when heaven feels closed, then you'll be ready when His surprise comes. Because when He breaks that silence, it will not be with a whisper, but with the unmistakable sound of His favor flooding into your life. Faith in the daylight is easy when the blessings are flowing, when prayers are being answered quickly, when signs and confirmations seem to follow you everywhere. Trust feels natural. But the faith that truly moves mountains is forged in the dark, in the places where you can't see the next step, where you have no evidence except the promises of God, and where every part of you is tempted to let go. The dark seasons of life are unsettling because they strip away the comforts we often rely on to keep going. You don't have the clear path in front of you. You don't have the emotional strength you once felt. Sometimes you don't even have the words to pray anymore, and yet something within you refuses to give up. That something is the spark of faith. Small perhaps, but alive and determined to keep trusting when logic says it's over. This is the kind of faith God treasures. It is not loud or showy. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It is quiet, persistent, and stubbornly hopeful. It is the widow who keeps going back to the judge until justice is done. It is Noah building an ark when there is no sign of rain. It is Abraham climbing a mountain with Isaac, believing that God will provide, though he has no idea how. Holding on in the dark means you are willing to trust God's heart when you can't trace His hand. You are willing to say, Lord, I don't understand, but I believe you are still good. I believe you still have a plan. This kind of faith refuses to make decisions based on temporary feelings and instead anchors itself in eternal truth. There is a hidden beauty in faith that holds on in the dark. It grows your capacity for the light. When the breakthrough comes, and it will, you will value it more deeply because of what it cost you to keep believing. You will recognize the fingerprints of God on it in a way you never could have if you hadn't walked through the shadows. In the dark, you learn that faith is not a feeling, it is a choice. And sometimes it is a choice you have to make again and again every single day. But each time you choose it, you are building spiritual muscle. You are proving to yourself and to the enemy that you will not be moved. And here's the remarkable truth: the darker the night, the more stunning the sunrise. The seasons when you think you can't hold on any longer are often the ones just before the breakthrough. That is why the enemy fights you hardest right there, because he knows light is about to break through, and with it, the surprise you've been waiting for. One of the most painful thoughts in seasons of waiting is this: I've lost so much time. You look back at the years you spent praying, enduring, working and believing, and you can't help but notice all the opportunities you think slipped through your fingers. You wonder about the dreams that seemed delayed, the relationships that faded, the moments you can never get back. It's as if life has been on hold, and you fear the time is gone forever. But here is a truth that changes everything. God is not limited by the clock, and He is not bound by the calendar. He is the Redeemer of time. When God restores, He doesn't simply hand back what was taken, He multiplies it. Joel 2:25 speaks of Him restoring the years that the locust has eaten. Notice it says years. Not just blessings, not just possessions, but time itself. Only God can take what felt wasted and make it fruitful again. He can compress a decade's worth of progress into a single year. He can accelerate what would have taken a lifetime into a sudden season of overflow. The enemy wants you to think that the delay has ruined everything. But what he forgets is that God works in both the seen and the unseen. While you were waiting, He was maturing you. While it felt like nothing was moving, He was positioning the right people, aligning the right opportunities, and weaving together threads of purpose that will reveal themselves in due time. Your waiting was not empty, it was an investment in the foundation of what's coming. Consider Joseph again. 13 years between the pit and the palace. From the outside, those years might have looked wasted, but in reality, they were years of preparation. God was building His wisdom, His humility, His ability to govern. And when the time came, Joseph was elevated overnight into a position that changed the course of nations. What if those years you call wasted are actually the very years God has been using to make sure your blessing will last? The redemption of time is not just about restoration, it's about transformation. When God redeems time, He doesn't take you back to who you were before, He moves you forward into someone stronger, wiser, and more deeply anchored in Him. You don't just recover what you lost, you gain what you could never have had without the waiting. If you could see the fullness of what God is planning, you would understand that not a single moment has been wasted. Every tear, every prayer, every seemingly insignificant act of obedience has been part of a larger story. And when He redeems the time, it will feel as though the years have folded in on themselves, bringing you to a place you couldn't have reached by any other route. When God finally moves, He doesn't simply meet your expectations, He shatters them. His blessings rarely arrive in careful, measured amounts. They come in floods. He is a God of abundance, of more than enough. When the surprise arrives, it will be clear that this was never about just getting by. It was about Him revealing His lavish nature to you in a way that leaves no doubt it was His hand at work. The Bible is full of moments where God didn't just answer a prayer but went far beyond it. Think of Peter fishing all night without catching anything. When Jesus told him to cast his nets again, the result wasn't just a few fish. It was a catch so massive that the nets began to break and the boats began to sink. That's what heaven's overflow looks like. It's not a polite answer to a polite request. It's the kind of response that overwhelms you with gratitude and leaves you breathless. We serve a God who measures blessings not by our capacity to imagine them, but by His capacity to give. And His capacity has no limits. That's why He allows the wait to be long sometimes, because the blessing is not a small one that can be rushed into. It's the kind of blessing that requires your roots to grow deep, so that when the flood of favor comes, you won't be swept away by it. When heaven overflows, it affects more than just you. The people around you will see it, benefit from it, and be drawn to the God who gave it. Just as the widow's jar of oil kept pouring until every vessel was full, your blessing will spill over into the lives of those connected to you. God blesses you to be a blessing, and when He chooses to pour out, it's never just for your table. It's for every table you can reach. Overflow is also God's way of making up for the lean years. For every season you endured lack, for every door that closed, for every time you had to scrape and struggle, there is a corresponding season of abundance waiting. And when it comes suddenly. One moment, you'll still be in the place of waiting, and the next, you'll find yourself holding more than you prayed for, more than you thought possible, more than you can explain. The beauty of heaven's overflow is that it will not be subtle. It will be undeniable. You won't have to convince anyone that God has been good to you. They will see it for themselves. And in that moment, you will know why the wait was long, why the silence lasted, why the night was so dark. Because the morning you're about to step into will not just bring light. It will bring abundance that never runs dry. There is a mystery in the kingdom of God. The places that feel most barren in your life are often the places where the richest growth is happening. Suffering feels like a wasteland, like nothing good could ever come from it. But in God's design, suffering is often the soil in which the most powerful seeds are planted. Seed, when buried, appears lifeless. From the surface, it looks like nothing is happening. In fact, it looks like it has been swallowed by darkness. But under the soil, where no eye can see, something miraculous is taking place. The hard shell is breaking, life is stirring. Roots are reaching down before anything begins to grow upward. This is what God does in seasons of suffering. He plants something in you that will one day rise and bear fruit. But for now, it is hidden in the deep. When you go through hardship, loss, betrayal, loneliness, delay, it feels as though parts of you have been buried. You can't see the purpose, and you wonder if you'll ever recover. But what you may not realize is that the very pressure and weight you feel are part of the process that transforms that buried seed into something living. The darkness is not your grave, it is your greenhouse. The enemy wants you to interpret suffering as the end. He whispers that you've been forgotten, that you're stuck here forever. But God sees the bigger picture. Just as a farmer knows the harvest will come in due season, God knows that the pain you're enduring is producing a depth of strength, compassion, and faith that cannot be formed any other way. Every tear you've shed is watering the seed. Every prayer you've prayed is pushing the roots deeper. And here's the beauty. When that seed finally breaks the surface, it doesn't just bring life to you, it becomes a testimony to others who are still buried in their own dark soil. They will see what God grew in you, and they will believe it can happen for them too. Your fruit will feed others who are starving for hope. The truth is, we often underestimate how much God can grow out of our pain. We want quick relief, but God is after lasting transformation. And so, He allows certain seasons to remain longer than we would like because the root system isn't ready yet. But when it is, the growth will be rapid and the fruit will be abundant. If you find yourself in the soil of suffering right now, know this: the burial is not the end. The darkness is not punishment. Something is growing that you cannot yet see. And when it breaks through, it will reveal why you had to stay planted for so long. There is a pattern in the way God works: long seasons of waiting followed by moments of sudden change. It's as if nothing is happening for months, sometimes years, and then, without warning, everything shifts in a single day. This is the nature of divine timing. God moves slowly to prepare and then suddenly to deliver. Think of Joseph again. One day he was in a prison cell, overlooked and forgotten. The next he was standing before Pharaoh, interpreting dreams and being placed in charge of the entire nation. That wasn't a gradual climb, it was an instant promotion. Or consider the Israelites at the Red Sea, trapped between an army and the water, with no escape in sight. In a moment, God split the sea, and they walked through on dry ground. In one move, the impossible became their reality. These sudden shifts are not random. They are the culmination of every unseen detail God has been orchestrating behind the scenes. While you've been waiting, He has been aligning people, resources, and opportunities so that at the appointed time, everything falls into place. The shift feels sudden to you, but in reality, it has been in motion for a long time. The key is that sudden shifts rarely happen without a long preparation. The waiting seasons teach you to handle the blessing when it arrives. They strip away pride, impatience, and self-reliance, leaving you with a heart that can steward the overflow. Because when the shift comes, it often comes with more responsibility, more influence, and more visibility than you've ever had before. When God shifts something, it happens with such clarity that you know it's Him. Doors open that you couldn't have forced, hearts change that you couldn't have convinced. Circumstances move in ways that leave no doubt. Heaven just intervened. This is why you must not despise the day of small beginnings, or the long stretches where nothing seems to change. Those are the very seasons that position you for the breakthrough that comes in a moment. And here is what makes the sudden shift so beautiful. It erases the years of pain in a single act. The joy is so overwhelming, the relief so complete, that you barely remember what it was like to live without it. It's not that the pain wasn't real, it's that the blessing is so much greater. If you are in a season where everything feels stuck, remember this: God's clock doesn't tick like ours. At any moment, you could be one phone call, one encounter, one open door away from the shift that changes everything. And when it comes, it will come so quickly that you will look back and realize every day of the wait was leading to this one moment. When God moves in your life, He does so with the kind of precision and brilliance that demands attention. His blessings are never meant to be kept in the shadows. They are meant to shine, to stand as undeniable evidence of His power and goodness. That's why some of the things you've been praying for are taking longer, because the outcome isn't meant to be ordinary. It's meant to be so extraordinary that it becomes a testimony that stuns not only you, but everyone who knows your story. We live in a world that often doubts the unseen. People demand proof. They want something tangible before they believe. And this is exactly why God sometimes allows His work in your life to unfold in such a way that even the hardest skeptic cannot deny it. When your breakthrough comes, it will be so perfectly timed, so specifically tailored to your life, that no one will be able to explain it away as luck, coincidence, or mere human effort. Your testimony will be a beacon. Those who once doubted you, and even doubted God's involvement in your life, will be forced to reckon with the undeniable evidence that only His hand could have brought you through. Think of the man born blind in John 9. The religious leaders tried to find every possible explanation for his healing, but the man simply said, "One thing I do know. I was blind, but now I see." There's a power in a testimony that's rooted in lived reality. People can argue about theology or opinion, but they cannot argue with transformation they can see. What's more, your testimony will carry weight because of the struggle it came through. People are far more moved by a victory that comes after a battle. When they hear about the nights you prayed in tears, the seasons you nearly gave up, and the faith that kept you going, they will see the depth of what God has done. And many will find hope for their own situation. And here's the thing, your testimony is not just about you. God uses it to encourage, inspire, and even rescue others. There are people right now whose faith will be rekindled when they see what He does in your life. Your breakthrough will become their proof that God still works miracles. Your joy will become a seed in their heart that grows into trust. So don't be afraid of how public your blessing might be. Don't shrink back from sharing what God has done. When the surprise comes, and it will, let it be a loud declaration that He is faithful, that He sees the tired hearts still trusting, and that He rewards those who refuse to let go. Your testimony will not just be a story, it will be a living, breathing invitation for others to believe. To every heart that's tired but still trusting, I know the wait has been long. I know the nights have been heavy, the prayers have sometimes felt like they're hitting the ceiling, and the weight of unanswered questions has been almost too much to carry. But you are still here, you are still holding on, and that alone tells me that you are closer than you think. God's silence has not been neglect, it has been strategy. Your faith in the dark has been building a foundation that can hold the weight of what's coming. The years you thought were wasted are about to be redeemed. The blessing you've been praying for is not going to trickle in. It's going to overflow. The seeds you planted in your suffering are going to break the surface, and the shift you've been waiting for will happen so suddenly it will take your breath away. And when it comes, it will not just be for you. Your testimony will become a light in someone else's darkness. It will speak louder than your pain ever did. It will silence the voices of doubt, not because you argued them away, but because the evidence of God's goodness in your life will be too great to ignore. So lift your head. Keep your heart steady. The God who has carried you this far is not finished yet. In fact, He's just getting started. The same God who saw every tear, heard every prayer, and felt every ache in your soul is about to turn those years of waiting into a moment of joy that will leave you stunned. And when it happens, you will look back at this season and realize every step, every tear, every unanswered prayer was not leading you to disappointment, but to a surprise that only heaven could give. And in that moment, your tired heart will know it was worth it.